The moment Kendra Thompson stepped into Lincoln High School's wrestling room, she knew something was wrong. The air hung thick with testosterone and malice, and at the center of it all stood Tyler Bernancic's 3 inches of entitled aggression pinning a freshman against the mat while his crew laughed. This is what happens when you don't show proper respect. Tula sneered, pressing harder as the smaller boy whimpered. What Tyler didn't know was that the new history teacher watching from the doorway had spent 15 years perfecting the art of using an opponent's strength against them, and in exactly 7 seconds, his reign of terror would come crashing down. The August heat in Atlanta was already oppressive at 7:30 a.m. when Kendra Thompson pulled into Lincoln High School's faculty parking lot. At 30 years old, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that came from years of discipline, though her colleagues would never guess that beneath her professional pencil skirt and crisp white blouse was a body honed by thousands of hours on the judo mat. Her deep brown skin glowed with health, her natural hair pulled back in an elegant low bun that emphasized her high cheekbones and determined jawline. This was supposed to be her sanctuary. After teaching in some of Philadelphia's roughest schools for 5 years, she'd accepted the position at Lincoln High, hoping for a fresh start in a more stable environment. The school boasted impressive test scores, a 92% graduation rate, and a waiting list for enrollment. On paper, it seemed perfect. The reality, she would soon discover, was far more complex. Kendra's heels clicked against the polished floors as she made her way to room 312. Her new domain, the hallways smelled of fresh paint and floor wax. The maintenance crew had clearly worked overtime preparing for the new school year. Trophy cases lined the walls, gleaming with evidence of Lincoln High's athletic dominance. Football championships, wrestling titles, basketball Victoria Sports clearly ruled this kingdom. She'd arrived an hour early to prepare her classroom, wanting everything perfect for her first day. As she arranged desks and hung historical timelines along the walls, her mind drifted to the journey that had brought her here. The youngest of 4 children raised by a single mother in North Philadelphia, Kendra had learned early that the world wouldn't hand her anything. Her mother, a night shift nurse at Temple University Hospital, had instilled in her children the importance of education and self-reliance. But it was her Uncle Marcus who'd truly shaped her path. A former Marine and Judo instructor, he'd started teaching her the gentle way when she was just 8 years old. After she'd come home crying from another encounter with neighborhood bullies, Judo isn't about being the strongest. He'd explained during their first lesson, it's about using your opponent's force against them. The bigger they are, the harder they fall if you know what you're doing. Those lessons had served her well through middle school, high school, and college. She'd competed at the national level, earning her black belt at 21 and continuing to train, even as she pursued her teaching degree. The physical discipline had translated into mental fortitude, helping her graduate summa cum laude from Temple University with a degree in history and education. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. First day at the new school. Baby, remember you're there to teach history, not make it. Love you. Kendra smiled. Knowing her mother's concern came from experience. There had been incidents in Philadelphia times when Kendra's protective instincts had nearly gotten the better of her professional judgment. But this was a fresh start. She was older, wiser, and determined to be the teacher these kids needed. The warning bell rang at 8:15 a.m., and suddenly the quiet hallways erupted with teenage energy. Kendra stood at her doorway, greeting students as they entered. Most responded politely, curious about the new teacher but maintaining the careful distance teenagers perfect when encountering unknown adults. Her first period class advanced placement U.S. History filed in with the focused energy of overachievers. These were the kids gunning for Ivy League schools, padding their transcripts with every AP class they could manage. Good morning, everyone. I'm Miss Thompson, and welcome to APU's History. She moved to the front of the room with practiced ease, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to commanding attention. Before we dive into the syllabus, I want you to understand something. History isn't just dates and dead people. It's the story of power who has it, who wants it, and what they're willing to do to keep it. This year, we're going to examine those dynamics and ask uncomfortable questions about our past and present. A girl in the front row, her nameplate read, Ashley Chen, raised her hand. Miss Thompson, are we going to cover the civil rights movement in depth? My older sister said, Mr. Peterson kind of rushed through it last year. Kendra's eyes lit up. Absolutely. We'll spend 3 full weeks on the civil rights era, including voices and perspectives, often left out of textbooks. History is complex. And we're going to embrace that complexity. The class went smoothly, filled with engaged students, eager to impress the new teacher. Second period's regular U.S. history class proved more challenging, a mix of kids who needed the credit to graduate but had little natural interest in the subject. Still, Kendra's passionate teaching style and relevant examples began to win them over. It was during third period that she first encountered the darkness lurking beneath Lincoln High's polished surface. She was walking to the faculty lounge during her planning period when she heard raised voices coming from the wrestling room. The door stood slightly ajar, and through the gap, she witnessed a scene that made her blood run cold. Tyler Brennan had a freshman pinned to the mat, not in any legitimate wrestling hold, but in a position designed purely to humiliate and hurt. The boy, skinny, probably no more than 14, had tears streaming down his face as Tyler ground his knee into the kid's back. Around them, a group of varsity athletes laughed and recorded with their phones. "Say it," Tyler demanded, his voice dripping with cruel amusement. "Tell everyone you're a little bitch who doesn't belong here. Please." The freshman gasped. "I can't breathe." I said. "Say it." Tyler pressed harder, and the boy cried out in pain. Kendra's hands clenched into fists, her body automatically shifting into a ready stance. Every instinct screamed at her to intervene, but she forced herself to think strategically. She pulled out her phone and started recording, capturing clear evidence of the assault. After 30 seconds, she had enough. "That's enough." Her voice cut through the laughter like a blade. Every head turned toward the door as she pushed it fully open. "Let him go." Now, Tyler looked up, his ice blue eyes assessing this new challenger. At Oltian, he was already built like a manto, 120 pounds of muscle earned through years of wrestling and weight training. His father was a prominent lawyer. His mother, a city councilwoman. He'd been raised to believe the world was his for the taking. "This is a closed practice, teacher," he said, not moving from his position. "Wrestling team only." Kendra stepped into the room, her heels clicking ominously on the mat. I said, "Let him go. What you're doing is assault, and I have it on video." Something in her tone, the absolute absence of fear, made Tyler pause. He'd intimidated plenty of teachers before. Most looked away, not wanting to deal with the hassle of confronting Lincoln High's star wrestler, but this woman stood there like she owned the room, her dark eyes locked on his without a hint of backing down. Slowly, deliberately, Tyler released the freshman, who scrambled away, gasping. "We were just messing around," Tyler said, standing to his full height. He towered over Kendra's 5'6" frame. "Right, guys?" His crew, Jason Reeves, Marcus Stone, and Derek Walshall, nodded and muttered agreement. They were Tyler's loyal soldiers, benefiting from his protection and sharing in his cruel entertainment. "What's your name?" Kendra asked the freshman, who was trying to disappear into the corner. "David," he stammered. "David Kim." "David, are you hurt? Do you need to see the nurse?" The boy glanced fearfully at Tyler before shaking his head. "No, ma'am, I'm okay." Kendra knew he was lying but didn't push. "Go to class. David, if anyone gives you trouble about being late, send them to me." David grabbed his backpack and fled, leaving Kendra alone with the 4 athletes. She should have felt intimidated, one woman facing 4 young men in peak physical condition. Instead, she felt the familiar calm that always descended before a match. Her uncle's voice echoed in her mind. "Size is irrelevant if you control the momentum." "You boys have names?" she asked, pulling out her phone again. "Why?" Jason stepped forward, trying to use his bulk to intimidate. "You gonna rat us out?" "I'm documenting this incident for my report to Principal Foster," Kendra replied evenly. "What I just witnessed was hazing at minimum, assault at worst. This will be handled through proper channels." Tyler laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You must be new here. My mom sits on the school board. My dad's law firm handles the district's legal affairs. You think anyone's going to care about some freshman nobody getting roughed up?" "I care," Kendra said simply, "and that's enough." Marcus Stone, the quietest of the group, spoke up. "Lady, you don't know how things work here. Tyler's just maintaining order. Freshmen need to learn respect. Respect is earned, not beaten into people." Kendra countered. And my name is Miss Thompson, not Lady. Derek Walsh, lean and mean with cold gray eyes, circled to her left. You know, accidents happen in schools all the time. Teachers slip on wet floors, get their tires slashed in the parking lot, find their personal information leaked online. The threat hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Kendra's expression didn't change, but internally, she shifted into full combat readiness. These weren't just bullies, they were predators who'd been allowed to run wild for too long. Are you threatening me? Derek? She made sure to use his name, showing she'd already identified him, because that would be a very stupid thing to do. No threat, Tyler said smoothly, his politician mother's influence showing in his ability to sound reasonable while radiating menace. Derek's just pointing out that Lincoln High can be a dangerous place if you don't know how to navigate the social dynamics. We wouldn't want anything unfortunate to happen to you. Kendra smiled, and something in that expression made all four boys take an unconscious step back. I appreciate your concern. Let me offer you some advice in return. I've taught in North Philadelphia schools where gang members carried knives and settled disputes with bullets. I've faced down drug dealers who threatened to kill me for failing their cousins. You think you're intimidating? Your children playing at being tough? Walk away now. And this stays between us and the administration. Push me, and you'll discover just how unfortunate things can become. The wrestling room fell silent, except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Tyler's jaw clenched, his hands forming fists. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by a woman half his size. But something in Kendra's steady gaze, the way she stood perfectly balanced despite her heels, the complete absence of fear in her demeanor, it all whispered, danger. This isn't over, he finally said, motioning for his crew to follow. You just made a big mistake. Miss Thompson, we'll see. Kendra replied calmly, watching them leave. Once they were gone, she let out a long breath. Her hands were steady, but adrenaline coursed through her veins. She'd hoped for a peaceful year, but it seemed Lincoln High had other plans. She found David Kim hiding in the library, hunched over a table pretending to read. When she sat down across from him, he flinched. David, I need you to be honest with me, she said gently. How long has this been going on? The boy's eyes darted around, checking for witnesses. It's fine. Really. I just need to toughen up. No. You don't. What Tyler did was wrong. And it's not your fault. Has he done this before? David's shoulders slumped. Since the first week of school, he says freshmen have to pay their dues. Usually it's just shoving in the hallways or taking our lunch money, but I made the mistake of trying out for wrestling, and he saw you as competition? I guess. He said I needed to learn my place. David's voice cracked. My parents want me to wrestle. They think it'll help with college applications. But if I quit, Tyler wins. If you stay, I'll make sure you're protected. Kendra promised. What Tyler's doing is illegal. We can file a formal complaint. No. David's panic was immediate. You don't understand? Tyler's untouchable. Last year, a kid named Brian Chen tried to report him. Tyler's dad threatened to sue Brian's family for defamation. Then Tyler made Brian's life hell until his parents pulled him out of school. Please, Miss Thompson, just let it go. Kendra studied the terrified boy in front of her. She'd seen this before systematic abuse, protected by power and privilege, but she'd also learned that bullies like Tyler only grew bolder when unchecked. I won't force you to file a complaint, she said finally, but I'm not letting this go. You have my email and phone number. If Tyler or his friends touch you again, contact me immediately, day or night. David looked at her with a mixture of hope and skepticism. Why do you care? You don't even know me. Because someone needs to. Kendra said simply, and because I know what it's like to feel powerless, trust me. David, things are going to change around here. She left the boy to his studies and headed to Principal Foster's office. Gerald Foster was a man in his 50s who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else when Kendra explained what she'd witnessed. He listened with increasing discomfort, occasionally glancing at his door as if hoping for an interruption. Miss Thompson, he said when she finished, I appreciate your concern, but you have to understand the delicate situation here. The Brennan family is very influential in our community. Tyler's never been formally disciplined because, frankly, we've never had concrete proof of wrongdoing. Kendra placed her phone on his desk. I have video evidence of him assaulting a freshman. That seems pretty concrete to me. Foster's face paled. You recorded it? Of course I did. A student was being hurt. I documented the evidence before intervening. That could be problematic. Recording students without permission is perfectly legal when documenting a crime in progress. Kendra interrupted. I know my rights. Principal Foster. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Foster loosened his tie, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Let me speak with the district superintendent. These are serious allegations that need to be handled carefully. In the meantime, I'd ask that you don't share that video with anyone else. I'll give you 48 hours. Kendra said, standing. After that, if no action has been taken, I'll be forced to explore other options. Miss Thompson, please, you're new here. You don't understand how things work. I understand perfectly. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. You're more afraid of the Brennan family than you are concerned about student safety. But here's what you need to understand. I'm not afraid of them. And I won't stand by while children are terrorized in your school. She left Foster's office, knowing she'd just painted a target on her back. But as her uncle Marcus used to say, sometimes you have to stand up, even if you stand alone. The rest of the day passed in a blur of classes and introductions. Word traveled fast in high school, and by sixth period, Kendra noticed students watching her with new interest. Some seemed impressed, others worried. A few teachers stopped by her classroom after school, their messages coded but clear. Be careful. The Brennans had ended careers before. That evening, Kendra changed into her workout clothes and headed to the dojo, where she'd been training since moving to Atlanta. The familiar smell of sweat and mat cleaner greeted her like an old friend. She needed this, needed to move, to feel the controlled violence of randori, to remind herself who she really was beneath the professional exterior. Kendra, Sensei Nakamura called out, a compact Japanese man in his 60s. He moved with the fluid grace of someone who dedicated his life to the art. I heard you started at Lincoln High today. How did it go? Complicated, Kendra admitted, bowing before stepping onto the mat. I may have made some enemies. Nakamura's eyes crinkled with amusement. In one day? That must be a record? Even for you. They warmed up together, moving through the familiar patterns of ukemi break falls and rolls that had been drilled into Kendra's muscle memory over 15 years of training. Other students began arriving, and soon the dojo hummed with activity. During randori-free practice, Kendra paired with Marcus, a brown belt who outweighed her by 80 pounds. It should have been a mismatch. But as they gripped each other's jis and began to move, the size difference became irrelevant. Kendra felt his weight shift, sensed his attempt at ogoshi, and countered with yukigoshi. Using his own momentum to send him flying, he hit the mat hard, but cleanly, already rolling to his feet with a grin. Damn. Thompson, you're on fire tonight. She was. Every throw was crisp, every transition smooth. Her body moved without conscious thought. Years of training, allowing her to flow from technique to technique like water finding its path. It was more than physical exercise. It was meditation in motion, a reminder of the strength that lived within her small frame. After practice, Nakamura pulled her aside. Whatever's troubling you, remember the principles. Seiryoku zenyo maximum efficiency, minimum effort. Jita kaioi mutual benefit and welfare. Judo isn't just about throwing people, it's about creating balance in the world. What if the world doesn't want balance? Kendra asked. What if it's tilted in favor of those who abuse their power? Then you become the counterweight. Nakamura said simply, but remember in Judo, we don't meet force with force. We redirect it. Let your opponents defeat themselves. Driving home, Kendra mulled over her sensei's words. Tyler Brennan and his crew were used to using brute force to get their way. But Judo had taught her that the strongest force could be turned into the greatest weakness if you knew how to apply the right pressure at the right moment. Her phone rang as she pulled into her apartment complex. The caller ID showed her mother. How was your first day? Baby? Her mother's voice carried the warmth that had sustained Kendra through every challenge life had thrown at her. Eventful, Kendra said, not wanting to worry her. The kids seem bright. I think it's going to be a good year. Her mother's tone suggested she wasn't buying the optimistic spin. Kendra Marie Thompson, I've known you for 30 years. What really happened? Kendra sighed, knowing she couldn't fool the woman who'd raised her. I may have confronted some bullies. Rich kids who think they own the school. Lord have mercy. What did I tell you about keeping a low profile? Mama. They were hurting a freshman. I couldn't just walk by. A long pause. Then, no, I suppose you couldn't. That's how I raised you. Just be careful. Baby. Rich folks got ways of fighting that don't leave visible bruises. I know. Mama. I'll be careful. And Kendra? I'm proud of you. Your daddy would be too. Standing up for those who can't stand for themselves, that's what he was doing when we lost him. Kendra's throat tightened. Her father, a Philadelphia police officer, had been killed trying to protect a domestic violence victim when Kendra was just 5. She barely remembered him, but his legacy of service had shaped her entire life. After hanging up, she made herself a simple dinner and settled in to review lesson plans. But her mind kept returning to Tyler Brennan's cold eyes and David Kim's terrorized face. She'd seen this dynamic too many times, predators identifying the weak, establishing dominance through fear, creating a culture where abuse became normalized. Her phone buzzed with an email, unknown sender. No subject line. Against her better judgment, she opened it. You should have minded your own business. Delete the video and apologize to Tyler publicly, or things will get very unpleasant for you. This is your only warning. Attached was a photo of her car in the school parking lot, taken from a distance. The threat was clear: we know where you park. We know your vehicle. We can get to you. Kendra screenshotted the email and forwarded it to her personal cloud storage. Then she typed a simple response. Threatening a teacher is a federal offense. I suggest you reconsider your approach. She didn't expect a reply and didn't get one, but she did double-check her door locks and made sure her pepper spray was in her purse. She dealt with worse than entitled teenage boys, but she wasn't foolish enough to underestimate the danger. Privilege and power could be a deadly combination when threatened. The next morning arrived gray and humid, promising thunderstorms later. Kendra arrived at school even earlier, wanting to establish her presence before the students arrived. She wasn't surprised to find her classroom door slightly ajar. The janitor had already been through, she'd been told, though nothing seemed disturbed. It wasn't until she opened her desk drawer that she found it, a dead rat, carefully placed on top of her lesson plans. The message was crude but effective: you're vermin. And this is what happens to vermin. Kendra stared at the rodent for a long moment, then calmly took out her phone and photographed it from multiple angles. She used tissues to pick it up and deposited it in the trash can outside her room. Then she washed her hands thoroughly and went about setting up for the day as if nothing had happened. When her first period students arrived, she greeted them with the same warm professionalism as the day before, but she noticed Ashley Chen watching her with concern. Miss Thompson, are you okay? You seem tense. Just eager to dive into the Revolutionary War, Kendra said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Today we're going to talk about asymmetric warfare, how a smaller of lose any war, how supposedly weaker force can defeat a larger, more powerful enemy. The colonists understood that you don't have to match your opponent's strength if you can exploit their weaknesses. The lesson was engaging, filled with examples of guerrilla tactics and strategic thinking. But Kendra couldn't help noticing how her words applied to her current situation. Tyler Brennan and his crew expected her to fight on their terms: intimidation, fear, brute force. But she'd learned long ago that the best warriors chose their own battlefield. Third period brought an unexpected visitor. She was writing on the board when she sensed rather than heard someone enter her room. Turning, she found Tyler Brennan lounging in a front row desk, his large frame making the furniture look child-sized. Can I help you? Tyler, this is my planning period. Just wanted to chat. Miss Thompson. His smile was all teeth. No warmth. Heard you got my message. If you're referring to the federal crime someone committed by threatening me via email, yes. I've documented it and forwarded it to the appropriate authorities. Tyler's smile faltered slightly. Federal crime? That seems like an overreaction to a harmless prank. Nothing harmless about threats and dead animals, Kendra said, moving to her desk. Her hand hovered near her phone, ready to call security if needed. But I'm curious, why are you really here? Tula stood, using his height advantage to loom over her desk. Look, we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. I'm willing to forget the whole thing if you are. Delete the video. Tell Foster it was a misunderstanding. And we can all move on. And if I don't, his mask slipped, revealing the cruel boy beneath the calculated charm. Then things get worse. You think a dead rat is bad? I can make your life hell. Every day will be a new surprise. A new problem. Your car? Your apartment. Your reputation, everything's fair game. And the beautiful thing is, you'll never be able to prove it was me. Kendra stood slowly, her movements deliberate. Despite the foot-plus height difference, she didn't appear diminished. Tyler, let me explain something about threats. They only work if the person you're threatening has something to lose and no way to fight back. I've already lost more than you can imagine, and I know exactly how to fight back. Yeah? You gonna use your little martial arts? He laughed. I'm a state champion wrestler. You think some strip mall karate is going to help you? I think you should leave my classroom now. Kendra said calmly, and I think you should be very careful about escalating this situation. You're not the first bully I've dealt with, and you won't be the last, but you might be the one who finally learns that actions have consequences. Tyler's face flushed red. He wasn't used to being dismissed, especially by someone he saw as beneath him. This isn't over. No. Kendra agreed. It's just beginning. After he left, she locked her door and took a few deep breaths. The confrontation had gone better than expected. Tyler had revealed his hand, shown his tactics. Intimidation. Escalation. The promise of sustained harassment. It was a war of attrition he expected to win through sheer persistence. But Kendra had survived worse. She thought of her uncle Marcus, who'd fought his way back from a crippling injury sustained in Iraq. Of her mother, who'd raised 4 children alone while working double shifts. Of her father, who'd given his life protecting a stranger. She came from warriors, even if they'd never stepped on a mat. The storm that had been threatening all morning finally broke during lunch, sending students scurrying for cover. Kendra åt in her classroom, reviewing her notes from the incident with Tyler. She'd been building a file screenshots, photos, documentation of every interaction. If this was going to escalate, she wanted a clear paper trail. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she called, expecting another teacher or perhaps a student seeking shelter from the rain. Instead, David Kim peered around the door, soaked, despite his umbrella. Miss Thompson, can I talk to you? Of course. David, come in. Sit down. What's wrong? The boy perched on the edge of a chair, water dripping from his backpack. Tyler knows I talked to you. He cornered me in the bathroom this morning. Said if I file any kind of complaint, he'll make sure I never walk normally again. Kendra's jaw tightened. Did anyone witness this threat? His friends were there. They never let him corner someone. A lone plausible deniability. He calls it. David's voice was bitter beyond his years. I just wanted to wrestle. I love the sport. But he's ruined it for me. No, Kendra said firmly. He's tried to ruin it. There's a difference. David, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? The boy looked at her with desperate hope. You can't beat him. Miss Thompson, nobody can. He's too strong, too connected. Strength comes in many forms, Kendra said, and connections can be severed. I need a few days to handle this properly. In the meantime, I want you to avoid being alone. Travel in groups. Stay in public areas. If Tyler or his friends approach you, get to a teacher immediately. What are you going to do? Kendra smile. And for the first time, David saw something in that expression that made him believe just maybe things could change. I'm going to teach Tyler Brennan a lesson he should have learned long ago. Some people can't be intimidated. Some people fight back. And some people know how to use an opponent's strength against them. That afternoon, things escalated quickly. During 6th period, while Kendra was teaching about the civil rights movement, the fire alarm went off. As students filed out, she noticed her car in the parking lot, 4 tires slashed. Obscene words spray-painted on the hood. She documented everything with photos before the rain washed away the evidence. When Principal Foster arrived, looking harried and overwhelmed, she showed him the images. This has to stop, she said. Tyler Brennan is terrorizing this school, and now he's targeting me for trying to protect a student. You can't prove it was Tyler, Foster said weakly, without evidence. I have a video of him assaulting David Kim. I have threatening emails. I have a dead rat left in my desk. How much more evidence do you need? Foster looked around nervously, making sure no other staff could hear. Miss Thompson, I'm going to be frank with you. The Brennan family donates hundreds of thousands to this school. They've funded our new gym, or computer lab. If we go after Tyler without absolutely ironclad proof, they'll bury us in lawsuits. The district won't back us up. I've seen it happen before. So you're telling me to just accept this? Let him terrorize students and staff with impunity? I'm telling you to be smart. Foster said, document everything. Yes, but don't provoke him. Maybe he'll graduate, and this will all go away. He's a junior, Kendra pointed out. You're suggesting we let him run wild for 2 more years? Foster's silence was answer enough. As he walked away, Kendra felt a cold fury settle in her chest. The system had failed. The people meant to protect students were more concerned with protecting donations. If David Kim and others like him were going to get justice, she'd have to deliver it herself. She called a tow truck for her car and got a ride home from Missina. Martinez, the Spanish teacher who'd been one of the few to warn her about Tyler on her first day. You're playing a dangerous game, Martinez said as they drove through the rain-slicked streets. The Brennans don't just have money, they have connections, police, judges, media. They can make your life very difficult. They're already making my life difficult, Kendra pointed out. The question is whether I'm going to accept it or fight back. And which are you choosing? Kendra watched the rain streak down the window, thinking of David Kim's terrified face. Of all the students who'd suffered under Tyler's reign, I'm a fighter, she said simply. Always have been. That evening, she called her uncle Marcus, now retired and living in Florida. He listened quietly as she explained the situation. Sounds like you've got yourself a classic bully problem, he said when she finished. Big Dog thinks he owns the yard. Any advice? You remember what I taught you about fighting multiple opponents? Don't, Kendra said wryly. Marcus chuckled. That's the ideal. But when you can't avoid it, what's the strategy? Isolate them, take them one at a time. Use terrain to your advantage. Smart girl. Now think about how that applies here. This Tyler kid, he's got a crew, right? They make him feel invincible. But every group has weak links. Find them. Apply pressure. Make them question whether following Tyler is worth the cost. And Tyler himself? Bullies like him. They're used to people backing down. They mistake fear for respect. When someone doesn't fear them, it shakes their whole worldview. But be careful, Kendra. Wounded pride can make people dangerous. After the call, Kendra spent the evening planning. She reviewed everything she knew about Tyler's crew. Jason Reeves the muscle. Not too bright. Probably following Tyler out of habit more than loyalty. Marcus Stonekeeter. Smarter. Might have doubts about their actions. Derek Walsh, true believer. As cruel as Tyler, but lacking his charisma. She also researched the Brennan family. Tyler's mother, Patricia Brennan, was indeed a city councilwoman with aspirations for higher office. His father, Richard Brennan, ran a successful law firm specializing in corporate defense. They had 2 other children, an older daughter at Yale and a younger son in middle school. The perfect political family, at least on the surface, but everyone had secrets. Everyone had pressure points. Kendra just had to find them. The next day, she arrived at school to find a small crowd gathered around her classroom door. Someone had superglued the lock and spray-painted snitch across the wood. Maintenance was already working to fix it. But the message had been received by everyone who mattered cross Tyler Brennan. And you pay the price. Principal Foster arrived looking more frustrated than concerned. Miss Thompson, this is getting out of hand. Perhaps it would be better if you took a few days off. Let things cool down. That's exactly what they want, Kendra said calmly, watching maintenance work on her door. I'm not going anywhere. As students began arriving, she noticed something different in their expressions. Where once there had been curiosity, now there was respect mixed with concern. David Kim approached hesitantly, his eyes darting around for threats. Miss Thompson, I'm sorry. This is all my fault. Stop right there, Kendra interrupted gently. None of this is your fault. The only people responsible are the ones choosing to act like criminals. Now get to class. Everything's going to be fine. But as the day progressed, Tyler's campaign intensified. During second period, the lights suddenly went out in her classroom. When they flickered back on, threatening messages were scrawled on every desk in glow-in-the-dark paint. At lunch, She discovered her faculty mailbox filled with dozens of printed photos images of her from social media, manipulated to look compromising. The final straw came during 7th period. She was teaching when Tyler, Jason, Derek, and Marcus walked in. Completely ignoring the class in session, "We need to talk," Tyler announced, his voice carrying the arrogance of someone who'd never faced real consequences. "Get out of my classroom," Kendra ordered. "You're disrupting my students' education." "Your students?" Tyler laughed. "Look around. They know who really runs this school." Indeed, her students had shrunk back, some pulling out phones to record what they sensed was an inevitable confrontation. Tyler moved closer, his crew flanking him in a practiced formation. "Last chance? Teacher, apologize publicly, delete everything, and transfer to another school. Do it now, and this ends cleanly." Kendra stood slowly, moving away from her desk into the open space at the front of the room. "Everyone please move to the back of the classroom," she said calmly to her students. "This will only take a moment." "What? You gonna fight us?" Jason scoffed. 4 state champion wrestlers against 1 tiny teacher? "I don't want to fight anyone," Kendra said, assuming a neutral stance that would look relaxed to the untrained eye, but was actually perfectly balanced for movement. "But I will defend myself and my students if necessary." Tyler's eyes glittered with malice. "Necessary? Let me show you necessary." He lunged forward, reaching to grab her shoulder. A classic wrestler's set up for a takedown. But Kendra had been preparing for this moment since their first encounter. As his hand approached, she pivoted smoothly, capturing his wrist and using his forward momentum against him. It was a textbook kotegaeshi, a wrist turn throw that sent Tyler spinning through the air. He hit the ground hard, the impact driving the breath from his lungs. The classroom erupted in gasps and shouts. Before Tyler could recover, Jason charged in with a roar, trying to tackle Kendra around the waist. She dropped her weight and executed a perfect sumigaeshi, sacrificing her own balance to launch Jason over her head. He crashed into the whiteboard with a sound like thunder. Derek and Marcus attacked simultaneously from different angles, a smart strategy against most opponents. But Kendra had trained for multiple attackers since she was 15. She flowed between them like water, using Derek's aggression to block Marcus's approach. A quick foot sweep sent Derek tumbling into a desk, while a simple arm drag spun Marcus into the wall. The entire exchange had taken less than 20 seconds. 4 state champion wrestlers lay groaning on her classroom floor, while Kendra stood calmly in the center, not even breathing hard. "Is everyone okay?" she asked her stunned students. "Nobody hurt?" Tyler struggled to his feet, his face purple with rage and humiliation. You can't. This is assault. Self-defense," Kendra corrected. 4 adult-sized males attacked a female teacher in front of 22 witnesses. "I used minimum force to protect myself and my students." She pulled out her phone. "In fact, I'm calling security and the police right now." "Wait," Marcus Stone spoke up from where he sat against the wall. "Just wait." "Tyler, this is insane. Man, she could have really hurt us. But she didn't. We need to stop." "Shut up," Tula snarled. "We're not done." "Yes, you are." The voice from the doorway made everyone freeze. Patricia Brennan stood there, her political smile nowhere in evidence. Behind her stood Principal Foster, 2 security guards, and a uniformed police officer, Tyler James Brennan. "You're coming with me." "Now." "Mom, what are you?" "I said now." The councilwoman's voice cracked like a whip. She turned to Kendra, hair expression unreadable. "Miss Thompson, I owe you an apology. I've been willfully blind to my son's behavior. That ends today." Tyler's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "But Mom, she has shown more restraint than you deserved." Patricia finished. "I've been getting calls all day. Parents, teachers, students, all with stories about you and your friends. Stories I dismissed as jealousy or exaggeration. Then I saw the security footage from yesterday, the emails you sent, the vandalism you ordered." Her voice dropped to Arctic temperatures. "You've embarrassed this family and dishonored everything we claim to stand for." The officer stepped forward. "Tyler Brennan, Jason Reeves, Derek Walsh, Marcus Stone, you're all being detained for assault, vandalism, and terroristic threats. You have the right to remain silent." As the 4 boys were led away in handcuffs, The classroom erupted in spontaneous applause. Several students were crying, whether from relief or shock. Kendra couldn't tell. David Kim pushed through the crowd, his face shining with something that looked like hope. "You did it?" he whispered. "You actually did it?" "We all did it," Kendra corrected, looking around at her students. Every person who stood up, who refused to be silent, who chose courage over comfort. "We all did this together." The aftermath was swift and thorough. The investigation that followed revealed years of systematic abuse by Tyler and his crew. Dozens of students came forward with stories of harassment, assault, and intimidation. The wrestling room incidents turned out to be a long-standing tradition of hazing that had been covered up for years. Tyler was expelled and faced criminal charges for assault and making terroristic threats. His 3 accomplices received suspensions and mandatory counseling, with Marcus Stone, who had shown remorse, getting the lightest sentence. The Brennan family quietly withdrew their funding from the school and moved out of the district by winter break. But the real changes went deeper than punishments. Principal Foster, shaken by how close he'd come to enabling a tragedy, implemented comprehensive anti-bullying policies with real teeth. The wrestling program was restructured with new coaches who emphasized character over championships. A peer mediation program was established with David Kim as one of its first student leaders. Kendra's classroom became a sanctuary for students who'd previously had nowhere to turn. Her History Through Strength curriculum, which used examples of historical figures who'd stood up to oppression, became a model for the district. She started an after-school self-defense program, teaching students not just physical techniques, but the confidence to walk tall and speak up. 6 months later, at the end-of-year assembly, Kendra received the Excellence in Teaching Award. As she stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces, many of whom had found their voices in her classroom, she thought about the journey that had brought them all here. "When I first arrived at Lincoln High," she began, "someone told me this was a school where certain students were untouchable, where power and privilege trumped justice and kindness. But you've proven that wrong. You've shown that when good people stand together, when we refuse to be silent in the face of wrongdoing, when we protect those who cannot protect themselves, that's when real change happens." She paused, making eye contact with David Kim in the 3rd row, who now walked the halls with confidence, with Ashley Chen, who'd started a student journalism blog that fearlessly reported on school issues, with former victims who'd become advocates, and even with Marcus Stone, who'd returned from suspension genuinely committed to making amends. "The martial art I practice, Judo, means the gentle way," Kendra continued. "But gentleness isn't weakness. It's strength under control. It's choosing to lift others up rather than tear them down. It's understanding that true power comes not from dominating others, but from empowering them. Each of you has that power within you. Use it wisely. Use it bravely. Use it to make our world better than you found it." The standing ovation that followed lasted 5 full minutes. Later, as Kendra packed up her classroom for summer break, she found a note tucked into her desk drawer, the same drawer where someone had once left a dead rat. This note was different. "Miss Thompson, thank you for showing me that strength isn't about hurting others. I'm transferring to a therapeutic boarding school to deal with my issues. I'm sorry for everything. Maybe someday I can make things right. Tyler Brennan." She held the note for a long moment, then carefully filed it away. Redemption was possible for anyone willing to do the hard work of change. That was another lesson worth teaching. As she walked out of Lincoln High that afternoon, Kendra felt the satisfaction of a fight well fought, not with fists or throws, but with courage, persistence, and an unwavering commitment to justice. She'd come here to teach history, but instead had helped write a new chapter in the school's story, one where bullies learned that their actions had consequences, where victims found their voices, and where one determined teacher proved that sometimes the smallest person in the room could be the most powerful force for change. Her uncle Marcus had been right all those years ago. Size was irrelevant when you controlled the momentum, and Kendra Thompson had shifted the momentum of an entire school, throwing off the weight of fear and intimidation as easily as she'd thrown Tyler Brennan. The bullies had messed with the wrong teacher, and in learning that lesson, they'd inadvertently taught everyone else an even more important one: that standing up to injustice wasn't just possible, it was necessary, and sometimes all it took was one person with the courage to say, "Enough," to change everything. As her mother always said, "Baby, you come from warriors." And at Lincoln High School, everyone had learned exactly what that meant. The following September brought unexpected changes to Lincoln High. The school district, impressed by the transformation, invited Kendra to lead professional development workshops for other teachers on confronting bullying through empowerment. Her methods became a case study at the State Education Conference. David Kim, now a sophomore, had not only rejoined the wrestling team but was elected team captain, the youngest in school history. Under new coaching staff who emphasized respect and sportsmanship, the team's culture transformed completely. They still won matches, but now they won with honor. One crisp October morning, Kendra received an unexpected visitor. Patricia Brennan stood at her classroom door, looking far different from the polished politician of a year ago. "Miss Thompson, I wondered if we could talk?" Kendra gestured to a chair. "Of course. I wanted to thank you," Patricia said, her voice heavy with emotion. "What happened last year was the wake-up call our family desperately needed. Tyler's getting real help now. He's at a therapeutic school in Montana, working with counselors who specialize in aggression and entitlement issues. His last letter, he actually sounded like the boy I used to know before we lost our way. I'm glad he's getting help," Kendra said sincerely. "Change is possible for everyone who truly wants it." Patricia nodded, tears threatening. "I resigned from the city council. I realized I'd been so focused on building political power that I'd ignored what was happening in my own home. I'm now working with a nonprofit that addresses bullying prevention. I wanted to ask, would you consider being on our advisory board?" Kendra smiled. "Send me the information. I'll consider it." After Patricia left, Kendra stood at her window, watching students cross the courtyard, where once they'd scurried in fear, now they walked with confidence. The transformation wasn't complete, it never could be, but the culture had fundamentally shifted. Her phone buzzed with a text from her Uncle Marcus. "Saw the news article about your school's anti-bullying program. Proud of you, warrior. Your dad would be too." Kendra smiled. Touching the small photo of her father she kept on her desk, she'd become a teacher to shape minds through history. Instead, she'd shaped futures through courage. The lunch bell rang, and students began filing in for her History Through Strength, electiva now the most requested class at Lincoln High. As they settled into their seats, eager to learn about historical figures who'd stood against oppression, Kendra felt the deep satisfaction of purpose fulfilled. She'd thrown 4 bullies that day, but the real victory was in all the students who'd learned to stand tall without throwing a single punch. That was the true, gentle way, strength guided by wisdom, power tempered by compassion. The bullies had indeed messed with the wrong teacher, but in the end, that confrontation had been exactly what everyone needed to become who they were meant to be.